Hello, Dharma family. Reporting in for the Dharmathon rest challenge that we all undertook. I gotta say, it was a bit of a wink and a good laugh from the universe that this was the thing we were tasked to do because I was very burnt out and had decided to take a lighter workload and try to relax more before they announced this competition. And I was a little mad because if I made a private commitment to do less and to rest, I probably wouldn't have done it for the whole 3 months. But since it's a competition and I love competition, I said I was going to rest harder than anybody else. I think also the potential to win money was motivating. I don't know what that says about me, but I'll figure that out later. The thing that was the most difficult about this process is that I use productivity to run away from a lot of things. And I was always the person that was doing a lot of things. So doing less meant that I was basically inviting all of the stuff I had been ignoring to come find me and kick my ass finally. But I felt ready for it. My restful practice that I committed to in the Dharmathon was a nightly review and a lot cleaner of a sort of nightly routine. Less screen time. I got some red lights. I committed to settling down earlier. I'm a crazy night owl that likes to stare at computer screens and make art at 4 in the morning. Always have been. But most of all, I wanted to try a practice that's supposed to help you dream more. And that is the daily review, where you try to recount factually everything that happened to you during the day, the sort of active memory recall, and also dump out all of the things that are on your mind so that you go to bed fairly clean. This allegedly helps you dream better. And even though this was a rest-a-thon, I figured if I was going to improve my sleep, I may as well also try to get some awesome dreams out of it. Additionally, I decided to go on a walk in nature every day and to meditate longer and to take naps and do a lot of gentle yoga and other things. Just generally slow down. And it went very well for about the first fucking week. And then I had my first dream. It was a dream I had had before. In this dream, there's a robed figure wrapped head to toe in bandages like a mummy. He moves through a crowd of people, and everybody is desperately trying to reach out and touch him. And anybody that manages to seems to spontaneously heal. Their health improves, their wounds close, all manner of miraculous things happen. The man makes a point to walk slowly, and I watched him embrace a lot of people. Eventually, he collapses and returns to a strange tent. The people don't follow, but they wait outside for him to return. Inside the tent, there is a circle of women wearing black, with their faces totally veiled. They slowly undress him and remove the bandages, and underneath them is a horrible amount of scars, open wounds, pus, signs of illness, things that look like tumors. Think of a horror movie monster or something, Freddy Krueger looking guy. And they do their best to treat these wounds. They clean them. All the while, he's sitting there biting down on a strap of leather while they do it, trying not to scream. I think because the people outside of the tent would hear him. It becomes clear to me that what he's doing isn't miraculously healing anybody. He just takes their wounds onto his own body. I feel heavy as I watch this, but this is one of those dreams that's more like a movie. I try to reach out and say things, but nobody listens. Eventually, he resigns himself to go back out there, despite clearly not being well. I beg him not to go. And though he doesn't hear me, The last set of wounds he tends to are the wounds on his own face. When he unwraps those bandages to replace them, I see my own face underneath all the pus and the scars. And then I wake up. It's a brutal dream, for sure. And I would have it a few more times and work with it in active imagination. I knew what it was trying to tell me, the burdens of my own life. It was ultimately just the wounded healer that I was seeing. That was painfully obvious to me. The hard part was accepting why I was seeing that dream. I would rest and go for walks. I lightened my schedule, but I always acted like I'd go back to the way things were before. This was just a break, after all. There was nothing wrong with how I was living my life. I then had another dream about a month or so into this little exercise. And by this point, my night routine had gone to shit. I was scrolling the internet, writing and making art until 4 in the morning again, as if I had made no commitments. Not terribly surprising. I'd stare at my checklist and notice the several days of unchecked boxes in my Notion and just roll on by. Relaxing, slowing down, it made me confront myself. And the second dream showed me something I hadn't seen before. In this dream, there was a massive ocean of tar or some dark, thick substance. This ocean was full of people who were all writhing around, grasping at each other, and very clearly in distress, trying to reach out, trying to escape. But none of them ever could. At the edges were a lot of people that were dressed very much like the man that was me in my first dream, covered head to toe in bandages and robes, reaching out and trying to help them. And one of three things would happen if they managed to get their hands on anybody. One, the person would attempt to escape with their help. The rescuer would desperately pull at the person trapped in the tar, but they would eventually fall back in, oftentimes pulled back in by other people. Or sometimes they would be clinging to others, trying to pull them out with them. And the healer that was trying to help them couldn't pull them both out, so they sank back down. A second group, upon being grabbed, would go limp and not help at all. The wounded healer that was trying to rescue them would desperately pull, but without their assistance, it was hopeless. And eventually they'd fall back in too. The group that was the most surprising to me was occasionally one of these wounded healers would grab onto a person and the person would smile and then try to yank the healer back into the muck and the tar with them. And sometimes they would succeed. It would take that healer, that poor, robed, wounded, bandaged soul, a considerable amount of time to escape again. But they always managed it. There was some quality to the people who were trying to rescue everyone else that allowed them to escape no matter how deep they fell inside. I realized something too. Though I occasionally watched a person escape this well, they never did so with the help of one of these wounded healers on the shore. They always emerged from this sea of tar and writhing, agonized souls like some kind of twisted birth. It was always under their own power, without anyone's help. And oftentimes they would clean themselves off, leave for a time, and return robed and bandaged, trying to help others, just like the other people on the shore. This dream took me longer because it seemed bigger than me, but also very personal. I spent many weeks walking in nature and journaling and employing active imagination exercises to try and better understand what I was seeing. It was painful. Suddenly, one day in deep meditation, after doing some breath work and gentle yoga, The dream flashed through my mind, and so too did a lot of my past relationships, friends, coworkers, lovers. Some of the people I saw were the first group of victims. I reached out to grab them. They did earnestly try to save themselves from the tar pit, but were inevitably dragged back down. Some of the people I knew in my life were of the second group, where the minute somebody grabbed them, they'd go limp. They expected somebody to solve all of their problems for them, were quite angry when somebody refused. And then, of course, though I didn't like to admit it, I had met several people that were a part of the third group, the ones that were actually trying to pull the healers back in to the tar pit. They seemed to enjoy it. It seemed important to them that everybody suffer with them in a sort of perverse way. Their laughter and joy has a wicked tone to it. And then, of course, too, a couple of times I would see the face of someone that had emerged from the tar pit of their own will, a fellow on the path, somebody who understood why we were trying to do this at all. And it was painful. It reflected to me a deeper truth about what the wounded healer actually is and what I had been. Ultimately, I think wounded healers have good intentions, but there's a distortion to what they're trying to do. The archetype is born from wounds, and it's not so much about fixing people. It's more so about filling a hole. I think a wounded healer is a sensitive soul who does not like to see suffering, and so does everything they can, including often martyring themselves, in order to try and reduce the suffering of the world. But they never succeed. And this bothered me for a while. This bothered me deeply. Why would a being so sensitive, who clearly wants to help, be tormented and punished repeatedly? What were they missing? What was I missing? This was about month 2 of this little experiment of ours. And while I was resting a lot, I was also waking up increasingly exhausted. I was unaware, but if you slow down after long periods of overworking, you go into a sort of burned out state. I was sleeping more than I have in a long time. I was resting and taking walks, taking it easier, but I was getting increasingly exhausted. There was a lot of purging, a lot of writing, a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings that I didn't want to feel. But finally, I had a dream that helped me understand what the wounded healer lacks, what I lack. In this dream, I was in a temple, a strange, dark place I had never seen before. And there was a massive fire. I mean, big enough that it took up my whole field of vision. And for reasons I'll never understand in the dream, I knew I was supposed to walk into it. And so I did. The bandages, the robes, even the visions of the dream, my own memories, this whole being that I am, burned in that fire. But it was revelatory, beautiful, and obviously because it was a dream, it didn't hurt. I welcomed it. And soon I found myself burning things. I would write letters to people who had hurt me and burn them. I would write confessions to no one in particular and burn them. I would write out what I used to believe to be true and burn that too. And as I burned things, I kept repeatedly having this dream and revisiting it in my meditations and active meditations. And as I kept resting, began to write things out, confessions, letters to friends that they would never read, journal entries about all of the things that I had suppressed for years, my quest to be some great healer and fixer. I was a workaholic, the guy everybody called, the pillar of several communities, but it always came at great personal expense. I'd always burn out and eventually leave, unable to continue being the person that I was. This time, though, I let myself burn. I kept revisiting the dream of being on fire. I kept imagining lighting my whole body ablaze in meditation. It felt good. And in these dreams, I began to realize that the wounded healer is ultimately a person who has a strained relationship with the divine. I don't mean religion necessarily. I think a lot of us struggle to have a good relationship with anything beyond the material because religions and distorted spiritual teachings are as abundant as the air around us. They sort of poison the well. I'm talking about a radically personal relationship to the divine, dictated by yourself. The kind of relationship that permits you to shake your fist and yell at the sky sometimes, among other things. That was the kind of God I wanted to know. One that would let me scream at him, say, "What the fuck? Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this to me?" And not be punished for eternity for daring to have questions. And so I imagined myself burning. I continued to rest. And I realized that I couldn't be a wounded healer anymore. This fire represented a connection to the divine. And I can't make somebody walk into the fire. It's a weird trick. The people trapped in the tar, the people in the first dream that expected me to take their wounds for them, they have everything they need inside of them to heal. I can't do anything for them without their help. Unlike the physical body that I could bandage or give drugs to, trying to heal people's souls is a pointless exercise. You can only show them to the inner temple, you can only walk them to the fire, but they have to burn in it. I realized the fire was death and transformation, a phoenix-like rebirth. It's how the soul heals itself. It's how the soul remembers the divine. It's the esoteric dying before you die. It's the alchemy, the lead into gold, the negretto and the albedo becoming the masterpiece. It was always there. It was both more literal and less literal than I had thought. And as I continued to rest, I realized that the way I was orienting to the world was wrong. I was trying to fix people. I was trying to make them see. I desperately wanted them to remember that the divine, in whatever way they want to relate to it, is inside of them. That they don't need a church. They don't need a religion. They don't need a spiritual woo-woo system. They don't need to be atheist like some edgy college kid that read Friedrich Nietzsche. They just need to go inside of themselves. They just need to remember. But I realized that if I went around saying that, I'd sound a lot like a lot of the spiritual teachers I had read. It's frustrating. You desperately want people to see, but it's a bit like trying to explain sex to a virgin. They just have to go do it. And so I realized that what was burning in the fire was the wounded healer itself. And that the only thing I can do now is take people to the fire if they are ready, guide them to it, tell them how to interface with it, and perhaps tend and help them integrate the experience on the other side, whether that be through plant medicine, meditation, vision quests, darkness retreats. You have to die before you die. And frankly, you have to do it as many times as you can bear. While the physical body dies once, the soul can die an infinite number of times. And it does so whenever it needs to evolve. It needs to evolve almost every day, especially in the crazy upside down world we live in. And so I have burned away the wounded healer. And I don't know what I am yet. Some kind of mystic, shamanic weirdo, perhaps. But it's really just about knowing the discipline, the reverence, and understanding that all I can do is broadly gesture, that all I can do is gesture towards the fire, to point to it, to create symbols and systems, to tell people stories, to make a temple, to invite them there. But I can't make them die. I can't make them step into the fire. Only the individual can decide what to burn and what to cling to. Otherwise, they're forever doomed to writhe in the tar. And that seems so cruel. The old version of me would find that to be so spiritually bypassy in a way. But I will always show up for people. I'll try my damnedest to help them. But if I see soul sickness in them, I will resist the temptation to try and fix it by grabbing onto it, or like I used to, taking their pain into me. It's theirs. You cannot work through somebody else's karma and trauma for them. And I suspect, though I can't prove, that the divine set it up that way on purpose. Some things have to be done by the soul in question. And upon realizing all of this, I have to table flip my life again for like the 8th time. I don't know if I'll keep doing this channel or I have to radically change my branding or whatever. Things are just different now. And these types of table flips and revelations will probably happen as many times as I'm willing to put up with. I had one last dream. I strode through the crowds and they reached out and none of their wounds healed when they touched me. None of their illnesses faded. And every once in a while they'd burst into flames. And when this would happen, everybody would run. I would tend to the person who burst in the flames and they would gradually burn and sort of shed off a layer of skin and be reborn. They'd thank me and they'd leave. I strode back to the tar pits and I just watched, realizing that I had no say in whether or not a person could leave. If I saw somebody climb out, have that strange sort of horrific alien birth from this tar pit, I would obviously go over and help them. But otherwise, I had to leave them to it, which again seems and feels cruel and wrong, but I know better now. And of course, to anybody who asked me, I would just broadly gesture towards this strange temple off in the distance. I would tell them of the fire, of the death and the rebirth, and they rarely understood me. It was as if I was speaking a different language all of a sudden. I realized then that a person has to be ready, and I don't get to decide when that is. And so now my approach is very different. The way I work with clients, the way I coach and guide, or whatever word you want to use, it's more about invitations, reflecting, i- showing them how things could be. But it's a choice they have to make. And I think maybe the most radical thing of all for me is realizing that we have many, many lifetimes to make this decision. I'm not exactly sure when I found faith. I grew up very agnostic, atheist, mostly because my family had a lot of bad experiences with the church and left it when I was very little. But somewhere along the way, I came to accept that we're on a multi lifetime journey of refinement. And God has infinite patience for you. It'll nudge you, it'll push you. Your karma will play out like theater. But any moment you want to, you can walk into the temple of your own soul, inside of your body. No priest or government or system can stop you. And you can just die and be somebody new. Spiritually, of course. I'm not advocating for self immolation in the physical, literal sense, or, you know, but yeah, that's how my Dharmathon rest marathon dream time went. And as always, fuck you and thank you, Eric and Graham, for making us do shit we don't want to do, which for a bunch of psychopaths that want to save the world is take naps and go on walks sometimes. I look forward to hearing how other people's Dharmathon's rest edition went. Love to you all.